All right, guys, here is the goldfish tank. So it is a 120-gallon tank. It does have a 55-gallon sump underneath it. I'll show you guys that in just a second. We'll look at it just a little bit deeper. I do have in here right now, there are 12 goldfish, all of different breeds, sizes, and ages. That is the oldest one right there. That is just a regular goldfish, and he's massive. Just massive. I mean, he's as big as my hand. His name is Odin. He is the king of the tank. He is the oldest. He is at least 12 years old. Had him for a long time. He is just a big time beast, and he is definitely king of the castle. There's a couple other ones in here. This is my Aranda, or one of my Arandas, probably the largest and the oldest one I have. Still a baby though, guys. I mean, if you look at it, these are all still babies, except for these two right here. They're sisters. I got them, they both came from the same egg hatch. See, she's a little bit different. She's more of a black, orange, and white. And she's more of just white and orange. Both really pretty. A lot of red cap Arandas in here. I think I have 3 at the moment. They're little bitty. I mean, they're probably, about as long as my index finger. That one's a little smaller. I have one Ranchu in here right now. Name is Jelly Bean. Little fat little thing. Looks like a little fat toad. A couple blue Arandas. Now, I'm not sure. I have asked and I've looked around. I don't know what this is that is growing off of this Aranda's head. I don't know if this is some sort of hybrid. It's not a tumor, and it's not a fungus because they are perfectly the same size. They're like the exact same size on both sides, the exact same shape. It almost looks like it's trying to grow some sort of Oranda head or something, but it's like a mix of a Ryukin, something along those lines. If anybody has any idea, I've asked tons of people at my local fish store. I've asked people online. I try to look things up. It doesn't seem to harm them. It's getting bigger, but I mean, it's just perfectly shaped and perfectly placed. So I don't think it's like a cancerous tumor or anything. So I'm not quite sure about it, but if anybody has any idea, if you could just leave a comment below and let me know, I would appreciate it. Yeah, so I do have this big, nice jungle valve in there. If you guys have goldfish, you'll know that they are really hard to keep plants with. The best way I've figured it out is if you put a plant in there, make sure it's a big enough plant to where they can't grab a hold of it. Like this one right here, you'll see them sometimes nibbling on some of the leaves and whatnot, but it's just so big that they can't get it out. I also like to stack something heavy on top of it. Like, as you can see, I got rocks. That's what I did. I decided I put all the rocks on top of the root system of this so they can't get down into the roots. When you know how they are, goldfish. They like to go through there and clean up the gravel and stuff like that. So I piled the rocks on top of the roots, and it has done wonders for me. It has allowed this thing to get giant. All of this over here coming off this left side, that's all new growth. You can tell by just how much smaller it is in width than the regular original plant. There's another Ryukin. That's one of my other oldest ones. I like the way overall. I really like the way it looks. It's really pretty. I wanted to keep it simple. I didn't want to do a whole bunch of planning, which you really can't with goldfish. It's gonna look a lot better once they all get adult sized. Now, when they get adult sized, I might have to take a few out. I'm not sure. I personally think that I have enough space in here. It's got a 55-gallon sump. This is a 120-gallon tank. I mean, you're almost to 200 gallons of water for 12 fish. I know they're goldfish. I know they get pretty big, but if I got a lot of biomedia in there. I got, you know, plants in there. I put aerators in there, air stones, stuff like that to keep the water oxygenated. So I think that in the end, it'll be big enough. So let's take a better look. I'm gonna turn some lights on and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into my filtration, how I got it set up and stuff like that. All right guys, so like I said, it is a 55-gallon sump. Now I did not personally make this sump. I bought this sump, it was already made. This person had already designed it and put everything together. I've actually never made my own sump, but I would like to learn how to make one. That's gonna be my next step, because I have been thinking about upgrading this from a 55 to a 65. So I don't know that I'm gonna do it yet, but it's definitely something I'm thinking about. Now this is the very first sump that I've ever actually owned too, so it's all been a learning curve, guys. I'm not perfect at it, you know, I'm not trying to say I'm the best at what to put in a sump to make it work the best, filtration to put in a sump to make it work the best, but I'm just showing you what I've personally put in here that has helped me, and that it's, you know, it's worked really, really well, especially for my first time. So what I did is I took a lot of biomedia, and I just put them down in the bottom. So I think I put a total of 10 of these bags in there. It's kind of hard to see because this piece is right here in the middle, so I can't really get into the middle and show you guys, but you can see there's a few more bags in there. There's about 10 of those in there, along with these bio balls. Now I think I put like 3, maybe 2 5-gallon buckets full of these in there. So there's a lot of these in there, a lot of room for bacteria to grow. Now in between each of these crevices, I do have sponge. It just depends on what type of sponge, or which side you're on, depends on what type of sponge it is. I put the fine sponge over here, and I put the black coarse sponge over there in between. I just figured that's kind of where I actually kind of found out it works best for me that way. Now I do change these out, not as often as you would actually think. I mean, I probably change out the sponges in these probably once a month, maybe. I just find that when you let it sit in there and you let the bacteria grow on it, it really, really helps your tank. The only problem that this can actually, you know, I mean, even if it does cause a problem, like I could see it could maybe clog up and water would get a little hard to run through it. But I mean, other than that, I don't really have a buildup of anything, like anything bad. It just, I take it out once a month, put a new one in, I leave it in there, and it seems to really, really do good. Recently, I had some of these oyster shells and clam shells. You can see those in there. I put a whole bowl of those in there to try to get my pH level up a little bit naturally. I usually just use pH buffer, but I was tired of using that. I want to do something a little bit more, you know, eco-friendly and something a little bit more natural. So I put that stuff in there. It's kind of like a crushed coral or crushed coral bed, but I don't really have a crushed coral bed. I went with a black substrate. That's at the Eco Complete. So I didn't really use that. So that's why I put those in there to kind of see what that's gonna do. That's about the only thing I really test for. I test my pH every once in a while just to make sure that it's not crazy high or crazy low. I don't really chase water parameters too much. I've never been a parameter chaser. I just found that when you're chasing parameters, you're constantly changing the water, and so your fish can never really, you know, they can never really get used to anything. So they're always, you know, like, well, my pH is too low, so then you do something to raise it. Well, then it's too high, so you do something to lower it. So the fish never get to just kind of get in one zone, one little water parameter and stay there. So I've personally experienced more fish dying off from chasing parameters than if a fish isn't in its perfect parameter. I mean, like a goldfish, for example. Now, goldfish are a little different because their water parameter ranges are, you know, giant. They can go from the coldest water that I possibly could put in there to, you know, 72, 73 degrees. Their pHs can range. They're really hardy fish. Now, I do keep this as cold as possible, because I have found out personally, my own personal opinion, Goldfish do a lot better. They color up a lot better. They live a lot longer. They look a lot better in colder water. I've kept them in heated water. I had 2 of them die from heated water. And it wasn't even that hot. I may have been kept in it like 73, 74, but they just died. They got too hot, and I've never had one die from being too cold. I try to keep this tank as cold as possible. They seem to really, really like it. Now, I do keep a lot of snails in my sump. So people don't really like snails. Snails are kind of seen by some people as pests, and they don't want snails anywhere near their tank or in their tank. And if they see one, they want it out as soon as possible. But what I do is I just put my snails in here. As you can see, there are tons and tons and tons of snails in here. Hundreds and hundreds of snails. Anytime I find a snail in a tank, I put it in here. I found out. See, look at all those snails down there in the bottom. It's crazy. 55-gallon tank full of snails. But I found out, my own personal experience, that whatever you put in this tank eventually is going to find its way in the sump, right? That's how the filtration system works. So what I do is I put all the snails in there. Any of the uneaten food that goes through here ends up in the sump. The snails eat it. Same thing with dead plants. When I find any of this dead plant, all I do, I take it off, I throw it right down in the sump. The snails will eat it. The snails really, really help keep your sump clean. I mean, they keep the bottom of it spotless. As you can see, it's spotless. So I just leave them in there. I let them breed. Sometimes I got, the pea puffers, I'll grab a handful out of there and I'll feed it to the pea puffers. But other than that, I love them. And I've actually haven't yet to have any of these snails in the sump find their way into this tank. I have not found a single snail in this tank. The only snails I have in here are those 2 giant ramshorn. There's one back there. Not ramshorns, but mystery snails. I've recently just put 2 big giant ones in there. I got the white one right there. Oh, and there's the blue one. I don't know if you can see it. The blue one back there behind that fish. But I put those 2 guys in there just to kind of keep the rocks clean. I had a lot of trouble with just algae growing on these rocks, especially the big white one. The only reason that one's white and the other ones are brown is because I scrub this one with a toothbrush about once a week just to get all that algae off of it. I guess it's just from running the lights, but I don't know what else to do. I gotta have the lights on to keep the plants alive. I want to be able to look at my fish, you know what I mean? So if I gotta scrub the rock with a toothbrush once a week, just to make it look good, then I'm gonna keep doing that. So on top, I just have your regular LED lights. Now this one, I actually got this from the guy who gave me the sump. When I bought this whole system, this light was already on here, and it was actually used this whole thing was a saltwater aquarium. So he used that to light his saltwater tank. And there's no name brand on it or anything. It works really, really well to grow plants, whatever it is. I've been trying to do a little bit more research, so I could find another one. I'd like to have 2 of these big ones to put on top. I think that would really light up the tank and make it look even better. I still have a little bit of work to do on this. Like I said, I'm not done with this yet. I've only had this tank probably 6 months. So I still have a lot I want to do. With the background, I want to put a few more things. I'd like to do maybe like another plant and rocks over here, another plant and rocks over here. I'd really like to put a few more plants in there, but you gotta really focus, or not focus, but you gotta really do some research on which plants you can put in there, and it takes a lot of trial and error. Like I ordered, I think like 50 Amazon swords from Aquarium Co-op, and I planted this whole thing. This whole thing was planted in the bottom with, probably 6-7 inch long Amazon swords, and they ripped every single one up at one after another. I could not keep them in there. I even tried putting rocks on them. It just didn't work. So eventually I just pulled all of them out, and I've put the Amazon swords into other tanks that I'll show you guys eventually. But yeah, guys, that's about it. Like I said, it's a newer tank. It's only about 6 months old. Everything though right now is going great. I've had no troubles besides them just ripping up plants. All the fish are doing swell. They're happy, they're healthy, they're eating good. I just gotta try to bulk them up. I think once they're all, you know, a lot bigger than they are, almost fully grown, I think this tank will look like a super amazing, especially when I get the other plant sections in it, maybe another light. But besides that, guys, if you have any questions or you have any comments, and like I said, if anybody knows what that is right there on that fish's head, please put it down below. Even if you just take a guess, no one's been able to figure it out. So do let me know, guys. Like I said, like, subscribe, share it. I really would appreciate it, guys. And stay tuned for more of my my fish tanks and my other animals in my house, guys. Tisley's out.